everybody, this is Mike Van Meter. Welcome to Recovery is Possible, and really appreciate you joining us here today. And this episode of Recovery is Possible is brought to you by Retreat Behavioral Health, where there are endless possibilities for recovery. Retreat provides quality care at their leading mental health and substance use treatment centers, which are designed to offer patients truly personalized and comprehensive programs that are tailored to their needs. Retreat substance use and mental health treatment centers in Palm Beach County, Florida, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and New Haven, Connecticut do everything in their power to ensure that patients receive the highest quality treatment in a safe and comfortable setting. Reach out today at retreatbehavioralhealth.com or call at 855-802-6600 for more information. And today, I want to bring on our guest, Anne Taydus. And Anne and I have some mutual interests out in the community, and we do work outside of recovery to help the community in a lot of ways, but really particularly in recovery and mental health and helping people get well and promote programs to help people get well. And we met at an event a few months ago, got to know one another, and really got into some conversations about recovery, because it turns out that we're both in recovery, and she had a very compelling story, and I thought that she should come on to this program and share her story with all of you, because as we know, it's through our experience, strength, and hope that we help one another. And so with that, I want to bring Anne on to the program. And Anne, thanks for coming on to the show today.
It is wonderful to be on. How are you doing today?
Doing good. And I know you and I have talked about doing this interview for some time, and I've not heard your story beginning to end. So I'm excited to hear about that and hear, really, because Anne, and I know that you've run into this as well. When I go to recovery meetings or in treatment, when I work in a detox center right now, all I hear about are the problems. I'll ask patients, why are you here? They talk about, well, this happened to me. I got divorced. I got, lost my job, whatever the case may be. And I always tell the patients, no, you're here because you're an alcoholic or you're an addict, and that's a very serious disease. But they always focus on the problem that brought them there. But what I'm interested in hearing about, and I want to hear from you, is what's the solution? So tell us a bit about yourself and what brought you here today.
Well, I have friends and a lot of people in recovery that were long-term addicts. I'm on the other spectrum where I went from a completely successful stockbroker, in my 20s. I went to rock bottom in less than a year. It was shocking, to me, to my family. But coming from a family who thought that they would love me from now on, they would have loved me to death, had part of my story not been being arrested for prescription fraud. And so I ended up, addicted to pills. And it was, 15 years ago, when the opioid epidemic was, still a myth, and so I was arrested, and I got into one of these, the first time offenders program, and I was so disconnected with how law worked. I was so, I was so deep in it that never showed up to anything. I ended up getting pulled over, and I had a warrant out, and got locked up. And I was in such bad condition that the judge, Judge Rockwell in Chesterfield County, who had seen me the first time, as soon as he saw me when I was, brought up, and he was like, I was not married at the time. He said, "Ms. Craft," and he was like, "You have such a beautiful mind. You're so educated. I see so much potential in you that I could, give you another chance." And he was like, "But if I do that, I'm going to, not allow you to become the person that I believe that you were meant to be." And of course, then I was like, just give me the other chance, which would have killed me. And the retrospect now, looking back, it makes me cry to think that, people like that saved my life. So I got locked. He said, we're going to I'm going to give you a week in Riverside Regional, and let you clear your mind, which meant get clean, which, I tell people a lot, opiate withdrawal will not kill you. It's horrible. But I sweated it out. I was sick in a jail cell for a week, and I didn't have to take any maintenance, anything. And I went back, a week later, and my lawyer saw the same potential in me too, and he encouraged me going into drug court. And I don't know if you know, drug court in Chesterfield County, the graduation rate is pretty slim, but that's because it is such an amazing program. And you start out on house arrest. You have to fill out a calendar. I mean, you have to account for, and I say house arrest, it's not like an anklet or anything like that. It's, they can come by your house. You sign over all of your rights, search and seizure. They can come in your house at any time of day, but you sign all that over. And you fill out a calendar, and life is hard. I mean, I was living in the city of Richmond at the time, and so I had to come out to Chesterfield County 4 days a week by 7:30 in the morning to do a drug test, urine analysis. You have to do, therapy one-on-one with their clinicians, and you have to do group therapy, and you have to do MRT, which is, like a round table with your peers and then your drug court probation officer. And you go through this book, and it's essentially teaching you how to like build life, like how many hours a day was one of the exercises that sticks out in my mind there are, and what you do with those hours in a day. And it was like teaching you how much life is wasted, whether it's watching TV and you have to give testimonies, and you have to literally, in order to like pass this, you have to own all of your stuff, like your peers. You leave the room after you give your testimony, and your peers and your probation officer, vote whether you've accepted your part in it enough. And I was extremely resistant at first. It's not that big of a deal. It was just pills. I wasn't shooting up in a motel. I just could not grasp like my own actions. And it was a tough road. And then with 90 Days Clean, I found out that I was pregnant, which complicated, I say complicated, but my God's blessing to me, because I don't know if I would have survived it with now. I look at her as my miracle. It literally saved my life. So you move phases, and 2.5 years. And there were people that had been in there 4 or 5 years. And as you move phases, you get your rights back. So off house arrest, and then, and in the meantime, which is a key to the thing, is that in the midst of all this, you're calling colors, and you have to work 30 hours a week, turn in your slip, your paycheck, and they can come to your work. So finding a job taught me, where you have to be upfront honest about what's was hard, but I found the perfect job. It ended up also shaping who I was. So, adding that into it, the responsibility of you have to be a responsible, contributing citizen. You have to work, and these programs are just amazing. And, so throughout, and then I ended up, having a child and a newborn as a single mother with all of this stuff going on. And it just taught me, like, no matter how hard life gets, or no matter what life throws at you, you can manage it, and you can manage it clean. And 15 years later, I apply it every single day, what I've learned. And I when I'm doing what I do, besides being a mother, I'm constantly using, like, telling people like things like, is your side of the street clean? And I say, keep the side of the street clean, and that's all you're responsible for. Their side of the street is not your responsibility. And another one I use a lot is, you're responsible for the effort and not the outcome. So, it different applications throughout life, or throughout what I do now, 15 years later. Recovery is just, it's something that I have always, despite, my parents, why are you, because they don't want, that the stigma of, and they've accepted it now, that I'm going to tell my story, and there's not one bit of me that's ashamed of it, because I believe that it's part of my armor that God built for me. And is that we all have, is that this, I tell people, is I live my life in the light, and I am what I am. Take it or leave it, because what doesn't live in the light festers in the dark, which is, something else. And that became part of who I am. I mean, is that this is what you get, because the second that you start compromising and things start going back into the darkness is when you start allowing the demon of addiction back into your life. It may not be drugs at first, but it's the behaviors that come along that add. It's not just the drugs. I tell people a lot is that, understanding the behaviors, or the little things that you compromise your values on, that when you crack that door, before you know it, it's swung wide open. Especially when you're, get a couple years under your belt, is that, there's certain foundations of recovery, and long-term recovery, especially, that you have got to have that foundation of being unwavering about. Because, I mean, I've cracked the door a couple of times, and I've come really close to making really big mistakes, and I learned along the way that there's just certain things that you just cannot crack that door open. But I tell, so many people reach out to me that, for some reason or another, have no idea my story about, addiction. And when they find out, whether they've got 30 days or 90 days, as I tell them, and I'm like, I know it's horrible right now. I know that it makes me cry. Like, I know it seems so hopeless right now, but there is so much beauty in this world. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, just hold on tight and I'll be there for you. But, I look back 15 years and I can't even believe this much time has gone by. Sorry. I just look at my life, how beautiful it is and how blessed I am. To have what I have, and I have 2 beautiful children and a husband that loves me, and to be involved in what I'm involved in. And people don't look at me, and see that. And it's shocking to people, a lot of times when they find out, and I'm like, why is that shock? Like, we all are flawed humans. We are all, none of us are perfect. But I mean, is that there is so much beauty, and recovery is an amazing thing, and it is a hard process, but the community is, and what you do is amazing, and being a voice, because if my story was just that to be kept hidden in a closet or put away and never talked about again, it means I went through it for nothing, and I don't believe that any of us go through our struggles or our, trials in life, and to not spread the survival as hope. And, there's, like I said, there's just so much beauty in this world that addiction just, I mean, I'm just sitting here and I can remember how hopeless, and it just drives you darker into the hole. And even seeing, a crack of light when you're that deep into it is impossible. But there's so much beauty in this world, and life is so wonderful. And I just feel blessed that God gave me a second chance. And, and I hope that what I do every day is that I carry that, that message in one form or another, for this generation, for everybody. And it may not be, recovery or addiction related, but in my heart and in my mind is that it's all interrelated. But yeah, even when I got to 10 years, I was like, whoa, it's been 10 years. And now that it's been 15 years, I'm like, God, how wonderful, is God, how wonderful is all of this? I mean, it's amazing.
You hit some really good points too. And that is, let me just kind of backtrack a little bit. And by the way, congratulations on 15 years.
Thank you.
One of the things that I know you and I have talked about offline, and a lot, particularly newcomers, this idea of stigma and shame, it's really prevalent amongst, the new people that come in. And I know the patients that I work with, that's something that they really struggle with, is this idea of shame and stigma. And I always point out that a couple of things about that. Number one, I have not met anybody out there that doesn't know somebody that has an addiction issue. So this is really an issue. There aren't many issues on planet Earth where you can say this issue affects everybody. And addiction is one of those issues. And it may not be a chemical addiction. It might be a process addiction like gambling, sex, overeating, undereating, gaming. That's a new thing that has come forward. And so everybody experiences it. And then what happens is people will then downplay the addiction in order for it to not sound so bad to them. And I think part of that is the addiction trying to protect itself, because this is the only disease that tells you that you don't have it and then tries to protect itself. And I'll give probably the most common example is when I say to someone, what brought you here? And they will say, well, I came here because my wife doesn't like my drinking because I'm a functional alcoholic. And I'll say, well, that's interesting. So you're a functional alcoholic. Yeah, I'm a functional alcoholic. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And they say, well, I haven't lost my job. So I go to work, and I'll say, well, oh, okay. So if your wife was sitting here right now, I would say to your wife, hey, don't worry, Bob here, this is all under control because Bob here is not really an alcoholic. He's a functional alcoholic. So there's nothing here for you to worry about. And I'll look at the wife and she'll look at me and go, are you crazy? His life is an absolute mess. It's shocking. He still has a job. And those are on the days that he goes in or isn't late, or, all the, the productivity is down, and on and on and on. And the reason why people downplay that is because we don't want to just admit that it is as bad as it is. And part of that is the stigma. So it's the disease protecting itself, and then the stigma. And like you talked about, things that are in the dark are going to tend to, mushrooms, grow in the dark. And we got to put light on that. We got to put light on our addiction so we get well. And is that something that you've noticed as well, that people just, in our own minds, it seems like more people would get help if there was less stigma around the idea of getting help. Does that make sense? And do you agree with that?
Yes. I work in the community. It's what I do 16 hours a day. And it's not the front runner of like the opening conversation, but, I would say 9 times out of 10, sometime when I'm speaking or with whatever I'm doing, is that it does become part of the conversation. And I do offer it up. And I cannot tell you how many people I see in an audience or in a conversation or on a chat thread or whatever I'm doing, that whether it's a parent or someone going through it or somebody who has a relative or, that they thank me, and is you break down the stigma, is that it is something that everybody goes through traumatic events in life in one form or the other, and it makes us who we are. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, especially when it's something that you overcome and it's giving you power. And if I don't share, the experience, strength, and hope with other people, then, I am still kind of living in the addict mentality of hiding things. But it's beautiful every day. You know, I would say probably, if not every day, I mean, a couple of times a week that somebody reaches out and thanks me or asks me for, you know, advice or, you know, is that, some people are not comfortable enough, and it's just not in their human nature to be upfront about it. And many people will not be as public about it, but I think it's also within ourselves is the acceptance that we are who we are, and we've made our mistakes, and we leave them in the past, and we don't dwell, but we also don't hide, and we don't shame away from them either. If the topic were to come up, you know, because it's so liberating, it's so freeing too, especially when you start to see the looks on people's faces, and people that human nature would tell us would maybe like shame you or judge you, and that will happen, but that's for them and their higher power to deal with. But the return that I get in my approach, which was radical to most people, and being upfront and honest about who I am, you know, 10 years ago, especially when I really was out of drug court, I was a mother, I was, you know, becoming, you know, a productive member of society again, is whether it was in a, you know, kindergarten mom group, is that I'm not going to pretend to be somebody and not have a story, and you take me as I am or you don't take me at all. And is that the amount of people that have embraced it versus the minimal amount of people who I became somebody that they did not want to associate with. I mean, it's a fraction of the people that, because they all, whether you said like in one form, or there's so many forms of addiction that, I mean, I would find it hard to believe anybody that a message of hope in any type of addiction and recovery did not resonate with somebody, you know, in a conversation or in the people that you associate with every day.
Yeah. And what people have to understand too, the relapse rate is so high. It just is. And one of the things I learned, like in my own life, and later when I did my internship, you know, while I was working on this degree that I'm working on, or that I just completed rather, but during that internship, I was working with the pilots, airline pilots, and, you know, they were under like these strict guidelines from the FAA where they could not use, I mean, being in a 12-step program and being in treatment was not an option. If you wanted to continue being a pilot, then you had to be a part of this program. And I found that was very effective, because I know in my own life, when I went and I raised my hand to get help, I was really on the radar by, you know, my employer. And it was like strict monitoring, you know, we're going to random urinalysis, you know, just really watching me very, very closely. And I remember at the time, I kind of resented that. I didn't like the amount of attention that I was getting, but looking back on it, it was probably a saving grace, because it kind of put a hammer over me. And the pilots were the same way. You know, the attitude from the FAA was, you don't have to go through this program. You don't have to go through all this, but you also don't have to fly either. But if you want to fly, then you got to go through this program. And with them, it was 2 years. You're going to be monitored for 2 years. But guess what? The 98% of the pilots after 2 years, even when they're not monitored anymore, go, you know what? My life is so much better after 2 years. I think I'm just going to continue with this lifestyle. So with all the groups that we had, they had the highest success rate of any of the groups in the treatment facility that I was working at, highest success rate. And I think that there's something to be said about having that monitoring like you did with drug court, where it wasn't just on your own, because early recovery is tough. It is because your body is changing physiologically, the neural pathways are reforming. Many people are malnourished, and they got to get the B series of vitamins up, serotonin levels up, GABA levels up, and And then on top of that, you're dealing with whatever wreckage you created, with just your use in the first place. And that's a tall order for most people to get through on their own. Would you agree with that, or what are your thoughts?
Into what in my life had brought me to that point. And it, I've always people that did it bare knuckled on their own, without all of those resources. That's why, and unfortunately, especially when you're dealing with like opiates or heroin but especially heroin, I can't tell you in like my first 2 years, because the heroin relapse, because on that one, I'm just going to do one more trip out, one more, and that one more is the one that killed them. I think in my first 2 years, it was 15 people, and but those are the people. They also learn too, is those are the people that go to meeting like if they have to, that's what they have to do, 4 meetings a day, to go and to get that support. But if you want it bad, and think about, how high, think about how when you wanted your drug, like how hard you went after it to get it. That's the same mentality that you have to have when you want to stay clean, is as hard as you wanted to go get your drug, when you have that itch, or you have to go out and find what you need as hard as you went to go find that drug. You have to go find with the same passion and obsession on that, is that you have to go find what is going to satisfy it, to make yourself feel better, but not on a high level this time, but on a like spiritual, emotional, physical, whatever it is that's making. And I still get the itch, like, is when the devil comes in and I start, I just want to check out. I just want life is, because it happens to everybody. But having, I don't come home and have a drink after what I do, or I don't have, is that you have to find other, vehicles, other mechanisms, and for me, it's been not so much seeking out help, but offering it to others is where I've really started to make strides, and those needs or that itch becoming less and less is the more of myself that I offer. Because I get back from them as much as I give them, and that's really where I've started, is that spreading the hope and freely offering it up, is where I have found that I have started to actually beat it more than I was when I was looking for help for myself. Just myself is when I started to offer it freely for others. But, you have to build, and if you don't already, like these programs that we talk about, if you don't have one forced on you, because that's where Chesterfield County Police, they patrol my neighborhood, and my daughters are like, "Mom, why are you talking to the police again?" And I wave them down and I thank them. And they're like, "I don't know if I've ever had anybody pull me over to thank me for arresting them, but it makes them, you think about how hard it is to be a police officer and how hated you are or whatever. But it's that, thanking the people that arrested me, and, thanking the judicial system. But if you don't have that forced, wonderful system, whether you think it's wonderful or not in the beginning, freely at your disposal, then you have to build it yourself. And that's essential, because anybody I think that thinks that they can do it alone, it's hard for me to fathom.
There's not a high
recovery.
Success rate with that, I can tell you.
No,
people doing it on their own, not a real high success rate.
How many times I was like, I'm just going to, in 12 hours, 36 hours, maybe, like, because in addiction, you're already like in your own, like, you're already alone, whether you are, actually, like, physically. But I mean, you're in a place that's the darkest, deepest place ever. And to imagine pulling yourself out of that alone, in my experience, it's near impossible. And so that's why the community and doing things like this and us talking about it openly, and both of us, with what we do out in life is, but not being ashamed and talking about it on a podcast, and telling people that that's carrying the message, that's giving somebody who's listening, who might be hanging on to that last thread before they go make a mistake or something, is that it's so important. And especially in this day and age, people are more accepting and more responsive to the honesty and the owning who you are, than 10 years ago. And I think that it really sets an environment for where the direction of how recovery and how addiction and how addicts themselves, are perceived. And it gives everybody, I mean, the people that I've come across and from what I do is, it's really positioned, it to be a place of hope versus one to be judged by.
Yeah, because again, everywhere I go, when I talk about my story, invariably somebody will come up to me and say, "Hey, I need to talk to you about a loved one." In fact, as I'm sitting here talking to you, I have someone that just reached out to me as I'm sitting here saying, "I need to talk to you about, a loved one of mine." It's everywhere. It's prevalent, and it's only getting worse. Particularly with the opiate epidemic that we're going through right now, particularly with fentanyl. And I'll tell you, if I know everybody in the public realizes that fentanyl is bad, it's permeated our society, but I will tell you, it's actually worse than most people realize, and it's bad. It is very really bad. I work in a detox center right now. The same detox center I'm working in right now, 10, 15 years ago, it would have been all alcohol, maybe some cocaine, heroin every once in a while. It is all, like, when we have patients that come in just for alcohol, it's actually kind of surprising to us because we're just not used to that now. We're just so used to so much fentanyl coming across that when somebody comes in, "Oh, I just drink," and we're like, "Well, what else do you do?" "Nothing, I just drink." And we're like, "Really?
Yeah,
wow, that's unusual."
That's the scary part about fentanyl. So, when I started using, in the early 2000s, pills weren't even, that it had just started to, and then that's when it hit its boom. And that's when doctors were giving out, 200, pills, and you could get 3 refills. I mean, and so when that crackdown came and all of the limitations on, then it was back to like street heroin, and so people had to get it somewhere. And if you couldn't get it from a doctor or a hospital or a pharmacy, then that's really when, the fentanyl that's when it got really scary. And because, that stuff will kill you. And I mean, it's bad, like you said. And everybody who goes out and buys whatever they buy, you have no clue how much is cut in, how much it's worth. I mean, is that the fentanyl? It is. And I can remember, I was in labor in drug court. I had just had a year clean and did not know that epidural. But and so I can remember laying there, and as soon as they gave me the epidural, I had that warm, fuzzy, itchy feeling. And I started, panicking, like screaming at my mom to call my probation officer. And I looked up at the bag and it said fentanyl. And I was just absolutely flipping out because I just had not prepared myself to feel that again. And, and so that's another thing is over the last 15 years, I've had multiple surgeries, major surgeries. And, but telling people and getting the minimal amount of medication, because there was probably, I think the first 8 years I was clean, I never held on to anything myself. My mother, because my husband was deployed a lot, is that never did I ever hold on to anything myself. But yeah, I mean, especially, in recovery, if you're going to have a procedure, making as many people aware as you feel comfortable. And no matter how many years that you have, like even now, if I was at 15 years, if I was going to have another surgery, is everybody in my family would know. And everybody would know how many, pills that I had, how many, because I'm in pain. It says take one every so-and-so, but it's only 2 hours later and I'm still in pain. Is that it's so easy and then you get on the slippery slope and it's a quick way down. But yeah, I mean, the fentanyl, and like you said, so when I entered drug court, it was pretty much all prescription medications. There was a little bit, it was mainly heroin and pills. We actually had 2 marijuana addicts, and she had been saying that, my probation officer, that a couple of years ago, it was crack, it was cocaine, it was, and then when I spoke with her, last year, she said that, the pill thing has pretty much, because they're so hard to access, is that now it's heroin, it's fentanyl, it's,
Percocets, yeah.
Yeah. But it's so hard to get. But I was also in recovery when, like I said, when doctors were giving them out, like you could go in with a toothache and they were just you could get them anytime, anywhere, any doctor. But yeah. And, but now it's so hard to get them, that's why you're finding like the heroin and the fentanyl. The rates are it's a completely different environment, or it's a completely different sales market, or whatever you want to call it. But fentanyl is no joke. It is, it is like death waiting to happen, especially if you were to if you get clean and then relapse.
And the thing about fentanyl is you don't even have to go looking for it now. We have a number of patients that come into the detox center that swear up and down they didn't go looking for fentanyl. They were using something else, and that something else was laced with fentanyl. And the next thing they know, they're in the emergency room. And that's what's scary about it, is it's everywhere. And the young kids are telling us, they're like, Mike, you don't understand. Fentanyl is everywhere in my neighborhood. It is everywhere in my school. And I'm telling you, the public does not grasp really how bad this is. It's really bad.
Yeah, it is. Children, it's hard for me to imagine. When you hear about, ecstasy parties in middle school, it's the street drugs now, also that have, made the rise again, the things that people can, cook up and create, and that you have no clue what's in them. But it's hard for me to imagine, because I have, an early tween teenager, that, children, it's just, that they're having these, or they have like parties where they bring whatever they find at their house and they dump them in a bowl, and it's we take strides, and I think that we start to make progress in one area, and then something else pops up on the another shelf, and it is like playing whack-a-mole at some point. But but there was, I didn't even know what it was. There was one person in recovery in drug court with me, and now this came from like fentanyl. You have to think like cancer patients, like the lollipops, like is what I think about, cancer patients and people that are, and so that's my experience of fentanyl. These are like, hospice. These are people that are that's what it's not even, it's not morphine. It's not, I mean, that's how strong fentanyl is that, it is, I mean, for people like dying of cancer. But yeah, is that fentanyl, and this has a lot to do with, where it's coming from across the border. And, is that's what, is that when you're not just buying heroin, you're buying, I mean, I read a study and I talked to my old drug court officer, that used to come to and look through our stuff in our houses. And he was saying that, when they do their evaluations from, whatever they acquire when they do busts or stuff, he's like, it's in it. I mean, it's in it everywhere. It's like a common, it's that I don't think that I run into any analysis of what we find on the street that does not have it in some form or another.
Wow, that is insane. It really is. And we've got to do something about it, because the addiction is tough, and the drugs that we're coming across right now are designed to target the recesses of your brain. I mean, these are synthetic drugs. They were designed in a lab to actually hijack your brain. And getting people clean off of cocaine and alcohol is hard enough. But man, when you're dealing with a fentanyl addict, it's incredible, because I've had young people sit and tell me, like, they would give me a college master's level description of the drug. I mean, they've researched it. It's not like these kids don't know what they're doing. They've done extensive research on it.
Too, that are out there, like Reddit. I mean, but it's astonishing to me, the amount of information that you can find on the internet about this stuff. And I mean,
but yet they go out and they'll tell you why it's bad, why they shouldn't do it, and then they walk right out the door and they do it again. That's how powerful it is.
I think about how many times that I, even, I may have had, now this is before drug court, because another thing about drug court is, so house arrest. Like if they were to find out you broke house arrest, which is something as simple as stopping to buy, say, a soda, which is not on, like if you left the drug court building to go to work and you stopped on the way to work and did not call and tell them that, say, you had to stop and buy a pack of cigarettes or something, that's breaking house arrest. And if they found out 6 months later, so we don't talk about accountability. And I mean, because I tell people we are all accountable for our actions. And when you say you're going to be somewhere or do something, so is that 6 months later they can find out that you broke house arrest, and they don't care how much time has gone by. You're going to be accountable for that action. But yeah, I mean, it's, there's so many programs, and it's sad, when I hear about people, that, are going through it alone, or, I've in the beginning, my mother was like, I was like, oh, so-and-so, I would get so many phone calls, and I was like, Mom, I'm so new to recovery. I cannot be your recovery go-to, because I was such a success case, especially considering I got pregnant with 90 Days Clean. I can remember Judge Rockwell on my graduation from drug court, he said, Ms. Graft, and he said, I will say this, is that I did not think that you would do this, nor did I ever think that you would do this in the amount of, because I graduated in the least, I was the say hot mess. I was like the hottest mess going in. And then I got pregnant, but then my resolve to be not a good mother, but to be like a mother that, and then I found out I was having a daughter, like a mother that a daughter would be proud of, is when I really dug my heels in, and I didn't just wait for it to be offered up to me. I asked for more. I had domestic violence in my past, sexual abuse. So I sought out more help, than was even offered to me, because, I wanted a different life. And when you start to understand what it takes to actually have a different life, it's in one of my favorite that I use is, if you want something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. And that's probably the phrase that resonates with me now every single day, is that if you want a different life that you've never seen in your own life, or you've seen a life, you have to do something completely different than what you've ever done. And that, and it's like putting your pants on, the pattern that you're used to, instead of doing left and right, retraining your brain to do right then left. Like, you have to do something different, and it's, but I mean, it is, it's great, because I can remember like white knuckling it, like day by day. They say every minute, every hour, a day goes by, and I can remember those minutes and those hours, and even at 2 years, I can remember being like, God, am I ever going to get away? And then I blinked, and because I dug in so hard and I wanted it so bad that I blinked, and at 10 years I was like, wow. And then I blinked again, and it was 15, and every day it's not a constant reminder. Like, it doesn't make me who I am. It's just a part of who I am now.
Yeah, I think that a lot of newcomers into recovery, they kind of think that the 12-step programs are very I hear that all the time from new patients. It's funny. It's always patients that aren't sober. They always say, yeah, I'm not into that program that you're into because it's kind of cultish. And I think that the reason why it has that reputation is because, when you're in recovery like we are, it's a big part of your life. It's we talk about it so much, and some of the other activities in my life I'm involved in, I actually have had people pull me aside and say, you're known as the addictions guy. It's like, that's all you ever talk about. And I don't know that that's true. I do actually talk about other things, but it's a lot of what I talk about. But I don't think that people understand that when you get into recovery, you kind of have to be that way. I keep my I'm at about 11 years right now, and it's something that I have to keep at the center of my life. But that's also why I'm at 11 years, is because after many, many relapses, I just determined, like you just said, I really wanted this. I decided I wanted it, and I was going to do anything I needed to do to get it. And part of that is just making it the center of it's what I think about when I get up, and it's what I think about when I go to bed. But that's why I've gotten 11 years.
Steps, and when people say it's cultish, is there that in itself is that they're resistant to not wanting to do the work, and you have to do the work, and it's finding not just a sponsor, but like a sponsor that's going to make you work, But there did, I do still go to meetings. It's not part of my regular, but there was a point to where, and you have to also recognize too, good meetings versus not good meetings. Is there are certain places where you just have people going on kind of to meet people that don't really want recovery, and if you want recovery, is acknowledging to yourself that this is not a safe place either. And there's so many meetings that you'll find the ones where the real recovery is versus just a meeting. Because going to meetings in the beginning too, getting slips signed, that kind of thing was part of it. And even after you move, I think phase 3. You don't have to go anymore. But I continue. And what I found, especially, and I encourage, because I met my daughter's father in the rooms, which is why they say don't do that. But, with especially newly clean people, is, women's meeting, and here in Richmond, the women's meeting downtown is an amazing, because for a lot of us, the sex addiction and the drug addiction, it all goes hand in hand, but going to, because you just want escape from whatever. And so when you get clean from drugs, if you're in a room of, someone was your co-ed or in the opposite sex, it is an easy replacement. And so one of my first things, especially when I talk to women, is to find a women's meeting, because a lot of the issues that I found that lead women to recovery is abuse of one form or another. And it's very hard to go. And that was, the foundation, from child sex abuse which led to domestic violence and to drugs to escape all of it. And so it's hard to talk about the things that actually, led you to the path that ended you up where you were, are hard to talk about in certain environments. And so finding that, that group of, and especially, and men too, is, talking about the things that are really, really important and sharing the things that are deep in your gut and in your soul. It can be hard in a mixed environment. And so, that's another, is that finding women's meetings that you can talk about. And I can tell you that the one that I went to is that there was, part of all of our stories was some sort of abuse or the other, which never would have been talked about, usually in, a mixed environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just keep going to meetings until you find the right group of people. And, Anne, I really appreciate you sharing your story with us today. And, if somebody wanted to get hold of you, is there a way that they can get hold of you?
Yeah. So my email is, it's VP, .va for children first @gmail.com. Or, they can always reach out to you, and you're more than welcome to pass along my information. But part of what I'm on the phone with, parents or members of the community, and what I do all day, every day. And it is, like today, it's a reminder of where I came from and who I am. And it's something that, when I have a different topic than, what I usually do every day, all day long, and, being able to, advocate for something different than what I usually do, it's welcoming. And, is that, like I said, is that if I don't share it, then I went through it for nothing. So, anybody wants, to contact me, a parent, especially that has a child. I deal a lot with, parents, of children. And, that's another important aspect, is I encourage all parents to go to, an Al-Anon, or, and another, is, the relationship, the anonymous, I'm having I went to the, what is it called? I'm not Gamblers Anonymous, but so people
Codependency Anonymous?
Yes. Codependent. Yes. Yeah. I went to that for a long time, because whether it was familial or I was extremely codependent on men and relationships, and the fact that I had just had a daughter, and I did not want those kind of men in my life, or in my daughter's life, if I ever chose to marry, is that also helped me become the woman and the mother that when I finally was ready to start, dating again, the type of man that I found and married and fell in love with was the complete opposite of what I had done my entire life. And that was from seeking out sources like, Codependence Anonymous, and, talking about because, codependency is an addiction too. So, I would encourage parents, and I tell them a lot too, is that there are meetings for you, because you need to talk about things. It's not, is that everybody especially in the familial system has to be part, especially with children or young people, is that they have to be part of the process too, is that, the child can't just recover, the family has to recover. Everybody has,
it's a family disease. Yep.
It is a family. Yeah. And so if the parents are, there as like bystanders. And I was in my 20s. Like I was not in my mind, I was a child, but, you know, I was an adult, but, you know, my parents didn't have to, but eventually they saw that the way to help me succeed was that they had to go, and they had to, they also had to be a part of it, because they didn't know how to help me. Their way of helping me was giving me whatever I needed and, you know, enabling me essentially. And, so they had to learn how to, hold me responsible, but also, you know, lift me up. And, you know, it really does need to be, something that everybody in the family does together.
Yeah. It's good stuff. And this is a family disease, and get all the help that you can. And on this, write-up for this show, I'm going to be listing some of the resources that I'm aware of, whether it's AA, NA, Al-Anon, Adult Children of Alcoholics, Codependency Anonymous, you know, those types of things. And we'll put that out there. But Dan, thanks again for coming on the show. And
Thank
just
you for
appreciate you. Yeah. And we're going to have you back again and talk about some of the other work that you're doing out there in the community, because that's very, very important. So thank you so much for coming on.
I would love to. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And once again, folks, this episode of Recovery is Possible is brought to you by Retreat Behavioral Health, where there are endless possibilities for recovery. Retreat provides quality care at their leading mental health and substance use treatment centers, which are designed to offer patients truly personalized and comprehensive programs that are tailored to their needs. Retreat substance use and mental health treatment centers in Palm Beach County, Florida, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and New Haven, Connecticut do everything in their power to ensure that patients receive the highest quality treatment in a safe and comfortable setting. So reach out today at retreatbehavioralhealth.com or call at 855-802-6600 for more information. And with that, folks, it is great to have you along for this ride here. Thanks again to Anne Taydus for sharing her experience, strength, and hope with us here on Recovery is Possible. And we'll see you next time.